What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Crew 2, and in this video I'm going to take a look at the Bugatti Veyron Edition 1. This was actually part of the Magic City Summit last week, so I did want to jump back into this car. Also, considering how old this Bugatti actually is, I had to jump in and drive this thing again. Now, of course, there is going to be 15 Bugattis in the Crew 2, and I would most likely say Motorfest is probably going to have a lot more, but do not worry, guys, if there is like 25 Bugattis, I really don't think a lot of players are actually going to be complaining, but nonetheless though, guys, the Bugatti Edition 1 is definitely going to be a pretty interesting looking car. So of course it is going to be based on the Veyron with like a special body kit on it, and my goodness, this car is honestly going to be insanely wide. Like, I feel like it actually needs those flares you would most likely see on like a semi truck. Like, look at this. This thing is absolutely insanely wide. It's kind of insane, but I really do love the gold accents going around this car. You also see like the gold part of the rims. And one thing I did notice, guys, a nice piece of details like the gold on the Bugatti caliper. So that's actually pretty dang awesome for the most part. Now, you obviously can't customize it, which I would probably say a lot of players are most likely not going to be shocked about, because for some odd reason you can't really customize any of these Summit cars unless it's like the Performante or something. But I really do think if they added this into Motorfest, I really feel like it would be like one of the best features ever. Like, for example, of course keep like the gold accents around the car and or like the special color. That way you actually know like which car this actually is, and or like the special edition. But imagine being able to take off like the wide body kit and or like that crazy big wing and maybe customize some of the parts of the car just slightly. I really do think that would be insane, which I would say a lot of players are also like a big fan of the Bugattis, but most likely a lot of them are also not. And this can come down to how many Bugattis are actually in this game and how good they actually are. But nonetheless though, guys, let's go do an outside look of this car right now and also take this thing on a quick top speed test. So moving over to the outside view of the Veyron Edition 1, you guys will notice probably how big this car actually is. I really would find it crazy if they actually ever did like a wide body Bugatti. Can you all imagine how insane that would actually look if they actually made something like this? But at least in the sunlight though, here in the salt flats, I really do love the way the gold accents do look. And one thing I did notice is how like the side of the vents also gold as well. So I really do love like these small pieces of detail. And of course it is going to be a Bugatti with that signature engine sound. And then moving over to the Bugatti's interior, the first thing you most likely notice is going to be the gold. I would say they most likely did this to actually match the outside of the car, which I have to admit I do really enjoy the detail of this car, because some of the Summit cars really do not have the attention to detail like this Bugatti does. Like, for example, guys, you will notice like the white interior. You're then going to notice like the carbon fiber going around it, but they actually threw in certain parts to be gold. Then they also have some parts being carbon fiber, basically to like mix it up and really give you that feeling that this car really is special, which I would say some cars actually do lack in that. And one thing I also noticed, the clock in the middle actually works. And then moving over to the top speed test here with the Bugatti. So of course, guys, a lot of the Bugattis are obviously going to be some of the fastest cars in the Crew 2. I would most likely say, how did I actually run into that? That was not what I had in mind. But regardless though, guys, the Bugatti Veyron Edition 1 is going to be one of the faster cars, at least in the hypercar category. Some of these cars can barely hit around like 295 miles an hour, so I would probably say the Veyron Edition 1 is most likely going to be one of the faster cars. My goodness, what was that? But I would probably say this car is going to do well over 300 miles an hour, because I did notice most of the Bugattis tend to do well over 300 miles an hour basically in every single way with like a nitrochemist set. So they are definitely going to be some of the fastest cars in the game. But here, let's get over this. Then I can see what the top speed is going to be. Let's hit it right now. So I am going through a lot of nitrous though. Let's see. Still going. So I would say around 319 miles an hour is going to be the top speed of this car. I did notice a lot of these cars that do have like a higher top speed do tend to go through like all of their nitrous trying to get there. So in a lot of ways it can be made for like balancing purposes to actually not make the car like overpowered. But I would say even a 300 mile an hour top speed is still going to be a very competitive car, even though many of the Bugattis do around 320. So when it comes to the top speed of the Bugatti Veyron Edition 1, it's obviously not going to be like a pushover because 319 is definitely insanely fast though. I would say the only car that can most likely beat something like this is obviously the 300 Plus, which I would say both of those Bugattis are easily going to remain like the fastest ones in this class though, because how many cars can actually hit 330 miles an hour? I would probably say basically none of them, but even with that though, guys, the Veyron Edition 1 still does around 319, but I really do think this car actually has a flaw and or many cars like this, because yeah, let's say the 300 Super Sport does 335, and yeah, the Veyron Edition does like 320, like that is obviously insane, but the biggest thing though is you have to have a Nitrochemist set to do so, and having a Nitrochemist set is most likely the number one thing with basically every car now, especially if you guys are doing summits. But if you are farming money though, let's say you want to do a lot of hyper events, I actually run a Fame Magnet set, so if you do run something like a Fame Magnet and or like a Loot Digger, you will never see 319 miles an hour out of this Bugatti unless you do slipstream someone. You actually have to have a Nitrochemist set on these cars, but even then though guys, if you are going through that much nitrous trying to get this thing to its top speed, is it actually going to be worth using this car for that and or like trying to reach that? Like for example, most of the better hypercars and or many of these street cars do tend to have like a lower top speed, at least compared to some of the best cars, but if you are obviously doing like the big New York and or like the Dallas hypercar event, then sure, having something like a 300 Super Sport might actually be pretty useful and or insanely fun for that matter. But even the Veyron Edition 1, I would actually recommend lowering the gearbox on this car just one time. That way for like some of these shorter races which normally do show up in summits, you will actually be a lot faster in that aspect, and that way you can actually get through the events, being able to fly out of those corners with like a better speed. So you might lose like 10 miles per hour out of the top speed of your car, but I really don't think it's actually going to matter, especially on these smaller events. Now the handling of the Veyron Edition 1 was actually pretty decent. Sure, it's not going to be like the best car in this class when it comes to like its stability, but let's be honest, most of the Bugattis obviously aren't. I did notice like going over uneven ground and or some hills, this car gets slightly squirrely, but it's not luckily as bad as like the Super Sport, and I would say it's going to be kind of manageable, at least for the most part when I was testing it. Overall though guys, I would say the Bugatti Veyron Edition 1 is not only going to be one of the nicest looking summit cars we have seen so far, it's also going to be a very unique looking car for that matter, plus it has some great overall stats, and I would say a lot of players really are going to love this Bugatti. I would definitely recommend lowering that gearbox just by 1 point though, at least if you guys do plan on using this car for summits. I would think that would actually help it. I really don't think having that like extra 10 miles an hour at the end is really going to make a huge difference with this car. But again guys, let me know your thoughts on this Veyron Edition 1 in the comments below, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more insight.